want to check this one out, man. We have got the thought police coming for you. New Zealand government punishes gun owners for their political beliefs. Yeah, they're using a loophole in the reasoning that you might not be able to get a gun in New Zealand because of what they're thinking. Let's jump on into it. Here we go. So we've got a common and persuasive argument against gun registration and why you shouldn't register a firearm. Just have an unregistered one around. It's all good. You know, I mean, you want to follow the law, but then also the reasoning behind having gun registration is that those who comply just put themselves on a list. Yeah, there's Sean. Yep. On a list to have their firearms stolen by government officials in the future. Don't take away my guns. Don't take away my guns, right? As if to emphasize the point, the New Zealand government recently confiscated firearms licenses and the guns they covered from 62 people because of their political ideology. This is happening in 2024 in New Zealand. Yeah. Hey, you. Is your name Brad Smith? Yep. Okay. Well, we're going to need your gun because of... The situation is an important reminder that warnings against registering firearms are correct, but it also raises a red flag about government's willingness to punish people for the ideas they believe. Under the influence of ideology, 62 firearm license holders with views aligned to the sovereign citizens movement had their licenses revoked after a police intelligence operation. Catherine Hubbard reported for the 𝗥𝗘𝗔𝗦𝗢𝗡 on October 13th. Nationally, police identified 1,400 people as acting under the influence of sovereign citizen ideologies, and of that number, 158 were firearm license holders. Now, I've reported on sovereign citizen over the years, and you know what? Most of their belief system, it just doesn't pan out, right? I mean, you know, basically just trying not to do what the government tells you to do to an extended result. It just doesn't work out that well, right? You can't do some things and do others and expect things to go well, especially when you're dealing with governmental regulations. If you're not familiar with the term sovereign citizen, it's a general description for people who deny the legitimacy of government and claim to live under common law separate from rules imposed by the state. It's like, you know, you see all these videos and I don't have to give you my driver's license. No, you don't. You didn't pull me over on a legit concern. All these people trying to, trying to school the police. And I'm just typically annoyed because it's like, what'd you get pulled over for? Well, if you just give your license to the dude, he's going to run your thing. And if you're got a clean system, then you're going to be fine. You know what I mean? Just everybody's, the cops are out to get me. Well, maybe they are because you're doing something wrong. I don't know. That is, they go beyond the skepticism of governmental legitimacy shared by many people, including philosophical anarchists like Michael Huemer, problem of political authority, and sometimes try to live by their ideas. They might refuse to use license plates and file liens against government officials while wielding garbled legal arguments that they incorrectly think will ward off unimpressed cops and judges. That is one of the reasons I am reading this, because the whole sovereign citizen thing, I mean, I've done some podcasts where, I've read arguments of what their reasoning is for, basically not following governmental law. They might refuse to use license plates. I'm sure that's going to work out well for you. I don't have to have a plate on my car. I don't have to have a registration. I don't have to have a driver's license. And there's always some smart ass that pops off with, well, Sean, they're right. Based on this thing from 1695, you don't have to. Well, how's that working out for you? Yeah, I'm just going to say, how's that working out for you? Because when a cop comes up to my window and says, hey, can I see your driver's license? You know what I do? Here you go. There you go. Here's my registration because I got nothing to hide. You know what I mean? Just say, okay, all right. While wielding garbled, so they might refuse to use license plates and file liens against government officials while wielding garbled legal arguments. They're so convoluted, all right, that they think incorrectly will ward off unimpressed cops and judges. The cops and judges are like, you are talking absolute nonsense. But is that a reason to take away their guns? No. No, it's just the government locking down on something it sees as subversive, right? Like anybody else, they're occasionally dangerous, but mostly they're that guy who corners you at a party to tell you about his magic constitutional revelation that will immunize you against the income tax. You don't need to pay those. You don't need to pay taxes in at all. In fact, when you go to a store and they tack on that 9 or 10% like they do here in the state of Washington. Before we go any further, I'd love to have you check out our private members only reasonabletv.com. We've got access there for a bunch of stuff that's open to the public and it's free. You can watch all of our content there. We've also got a members only section. Let's check out one of the videos. This is Seattle judge releases accused killer 27 hours after a 65-year-old military veteran was stabbed to death. This is content you won't find on YouTube or anywhere else. It's here because it is the kind of content that is just like, ooh, you can't talk about that. But it's what we're doing. So if you enjoy that kind of content and you support this channel, it's going to cost you $3.99 a month. Or if you need a bargain beyond that, if you need less than a cup of coffee from Starbucks a month, you can join on a yearly basis, and that's $39.99. So, I mean, it's a handful of bucks per month. I've dropped the price way down to make it affordable for everybody. Thanks in advance. Back to your regular scheduled program. Yeah, just take that off and pay the store owner that. I mean, it doesn't need to collect sales tax from you. It's all good. It'll be fine. Yeah, it doesn't work, does it? And it's so true. There's that guy who's like, hey, Sean, I don't know if you've heard this, but yeah, I mean, you don't need to pay any taxes at all. And here's why. And then I'm just like, I don't think so. I don't think so. Like a lot of conspiracy theories, until I see something solid, I'm like, all right, hey, I'm willing to listen to your theory. If you guys want to send me all the stories you do, hey, no problem. I'll look at them. But I'm going to shoot down anything that has a hole in it. Because I got so many stories to read that I don't need to throw one out there and somebody's going to say, hey, Sean, here is the primary issue with the factual correctness of the story you just read. It's this. I don't need to have that. You know what I mean? I got enough problems already. Just trying to keep this thing going. Sovereign citizens have found fertile ground in New Zealand, given a boost by the country's harsh COVID-era restrictions. Man, New Zealand, Australia, horrific. What are they thinking down there? And for some reason, they really upset governmental officials in that country. Well, they didn't do what they weren't being good boys and girls. They did something a little, and went down that road. And now the government's going to take them up down that road and take their guns. The Police Security Intelligence and Threats Group, Operation Belfast, in September 2022, aimed at identifying safety risks to staff from people influenced by sovereign city ideologies. Hubbard added in her piece, in most instances, no charges were laid at respect of a revocation process unless the former license holder had committed a criminal offense. So they're just running around taking people's guns based on they don't like the government and they think sovereign citizenship is a thing that's going to work out for them in the end. All right. Yeah, I don't place a lot of weight in it. I've done enough podcasts just kind of tearing it apart. But you can't take somebody's gun away from them. In New Zealand, you can, and they are. That's right. Country's police. I just started reading George Orwell's 1984 again. I haven't. I don't know if I've ever read it in full. I've read so many excerpts from it that I'm just like, you know what? I just need to read that whole thing again because it's bizarre how accurate it is relative to all this craziness that we're seeing go on. Right? Thought police. Not the Dream Police by Cheap Trick. No, not them. Thought police. That's right. The country's police conducted a domestic intelligence operation to identify people who hold cranky ideological beliefs. They were stripped of their firearm licenses because they were no longer considered fit and proper to possess them because they've got a belief system that contradicts what the government is saying. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Famous last words, right? I approached the New Zealand police about the situation, but their press people refused to answer my questions due to resourcing. This is an interesting response. Due to resourcing and our obligations to New Zealand media, what What's that? What does that mean? This is a Kamala Harris answer. We are declining your request for service, I was told by email. Due to resourcing, you don't have one guy that can send an email. You already just sent an email back saying we're declining your request for service. You could have just said, yeah, no comment. Or, hey, here's what we're thinking. This is why we did this. Instead, strictly speaking, I didn't ask for an oil change or a message or a massage. Sorry. I always screw those up, right? Hey, can I have a message? I mean, a massage? Don't make that mistake. Just the sort of answers media representatives routinely cough up as part of their jobs. That is literally their job. Interesting story in Seattle. Adrian Diaz, he was our interim police chief after Carmen Best quit because they were going to defund the police and they were going to cut her salary down. And she said, go F yourselves. Adrian Diaz became the interim police chief. Then he became the police chief. And then he was fired because he had so many accusations of just not being good to a bunch of women. And then he came out as gay, and then he's like, I can't be accused of, making all those comments. I'm gay. Well, that didn't work out. He got fired from the police department. But one of our Fox TV reporters went from Fox and became the communications manager for the Seattle Police Department. She got placed on paid leave, as well as Adrian Diaz at the same time. So you're like, what's going on there? I don't know what's going on there, but Adrian Diaz has had just so many little things come up. He's got terrible, terrible optics. But that was her job. The reporter that got put on administrative leave at the exact same time. It was her job to routinely cough up as part of their jobs. But those are a service, I didn't get them. Well, no, he didn't. Still, the 𝗥𝗘𝗠𝗜𝗏 article gave me enough information to search through the Firearms Safety Authority website, where I found a requirement for an applicant for a firearms license to be here we go. This is what's required in New Zealand. Be a fit and proper person to possess and use firearms. Are you fit? Are you proper? Oh, doesn't look like you are. Among the potential disqualifiers for that status is if a person exhibited, encouraged, promoted violence, hatred, or extremism. Well, you got Joe Biden accusing Trump of, all kinds of crazy stuff. Does that mean that Joe Biden is promoting hatred or extremism? Yeah, maybe so. It's all from the perspective of which you come, right? And the government's going to say, well, yeah, sovereign citizen, let's hand over that gun. Australia a while back had that mandated firearm purchase back program, right? Had a big mass shooting, and they said, hey, give us all your guns. We're going to buy them back. So many Australians are like, I don't want to give up my gun. And the government's like, you have to. All right, and give you a little bit of money. Here's your gun. And now you got a situation where the citizens, tyranny comes up. They got nothing. Yeah, I'm going to throw my rolling pin at them, that kind of thing. Extremism is one of those words that politicians find very useful for smearing their critics. Opposing viewpoints are always extreme relative to the speaker. So it's easy enough for those in power to point fingers at those who disagree with them and call for unleashing the censors. Unleash the Kraken, right? I mean, and the left always wants to say, I need to get on those guys on the right, and the guys on the far right are like, hey, those guys on the far left, you gotta quash down on that. What I found really entertaining was when Elon Musk took over Twitter. All of these ridiculous libtards dipped out and said, oh, we can't be involved with that. Freedom of speech is being impacted. Democracy is being impacted. We will not have anything to do with X, formerly known as Twitter, because Elon Musk is a threat to democracy. And then you know what they did? They dipped out for just a scooch, just a little while. And then they realized, if I'm not on that platform, nobody's going to listen to me. Nobody's going to hear me because there's no other platforms that are really like that. I'm not a huge fan of Twitter. I'm not a huge fan of X. And the reason is, I think it's just a bunch of people screaming at each other and trying to get into arguments and getting their word out. If you want to get a statement out and get it out super quick, you do a quick tweet, right? You just do. So that's the beautiful thing. But what I do is I've just got longer pieces. I'm not a microblog. I'm a talk on the internet. And a lot of people are like, Sean, you need to cut this down to 5 minutes. It's not what we're doing. It's not what we're doing. If you want a Coca-Cola soft drink, buy a Coca-Cola soft drink. If you want a Sprite, buy a Sprite. But don't expect the Sprite to taste like a Coke, right? So for the past 5 years, New Zealand has been led by someone who's never really understood what free speech is or why it's so important. Dr. James Kierstead, a research fellow at the New Zealand Initiative think tank, and wrote in 2022 about then Prime Minister Ardern. Why do we have all this leadership that is just really aligning with, let's crank down on free speech. Don't think anything other than the mandated governmental get the jab. Yeah, you're going to lose your job if you get the jab. So much of this nonsense, right? So perhaps it's not surprising that New Zealand officials believe simply espousing views the powers that be regard as extreme is reason enough to strip people of a piece of their liberty. You know what? It's not going to happen in my lifetime here in the United States. People love their guns, good, bad, or indifferent. People love their guns, and they're not giving those up. They're not giving those up. And for good reason. The law-abiding citizens of the United States, they are not the ones responsible for the mass examples of gun violence, people violence, gang violence in the United States. It's not done by people who legally obtain guns. It's done by people who steal guns, who, do whatever it takes to get that gun to, defend their turf, and then just go out and shoot somebody because they've got some beef with somebody else. That's the vast majority, but nobody wants to say that. They want to blame the guns. Oh, take away the guns. Take away the guns. That'll really fix things. What about a city like Chicago that has huge restrictions on guns? Huge restrictions on guns. How's that working out? Every 3 minutes since I've been on here, we're at 18 minutes. You've had 6 shootings in Chicago. You've had 1 murder since I've been on here in Chicago. On average, every 2 minutes, 48 seconds, every 14 minutes, something and change. In Chicago, a city with massive gun regulations, has had that kind of known quantity day in, day out. The machine just keeps going. You got citizens just shooting each other left and right. Just 2 years ago, the FBI passed around a guide to domestic terrorism symbols that could indicate a proclivity for militia violent extremism. Among the alleged worrisome symbols were the Gadsden flag, which I fly on my boat. Yeah, in Seattle. Yeah, it's what we're doing, right? People look at it and go, that's kind of a weird looking flag. Why aren't you flying the pride flag? Like, because I'm not gay. If you want to fly the pride flag, that's fine, but I'm going to fly the flags that I want to fly. That's, it's not what we're doing. The Betsy Ross flag, a black and gold anarcho-capitalist flag, and a Revolutionary War imagery. The Gadsden flag is the coiled serpent and don't tread on my freedom is the message. I think in Seattle, that is a very apt message. Plus, nobody knows what it is. They're like, that's a weird flag. Why is he doing that? Well, it's Seattle. So you guys can just, Getting tagged as an extremist isn't difficult, is the bottom line to that. At the same time, the government attempted to suppress discussions on social media when they crossed imaginary lines of acceptable dissent to government policy or were just inconvenient to politicians. That's so much of what we see, isn't it? The politicians just pick piece here, pick piece there. Then when it comes times to election, I didn't say that. I didn't say defund the police. I didn't say that, folks that are in prison, shouldn't be able to get a, tranny surgery. And you're like, no, you did. There's this thing called the interweb. And there's a thing called video where we have you literally on video saying, you're supporting defund the police and saying, hey, I think people should be getting transition surgeries at the taxpayer's expense in federal prison. And then the rest of us are just kind of kicking back going, you're saying what? You're saying, and now you're saying, oh, that's not, you know, another great example is, the wall is terrible. The wall is racist. The wall is horrible. And then all of a sudden, the optics don't look good for all the millions and millions and millions of illegals that have come into the country. So now we flip it around. Oh, security is important. My time as district attorney, my time as attorney general in the state of California, I really cracked down on those criminals. And you're looking at the stats of crime in California, you're like, and the out-migration of people leaving California, the number of businesses leaving California, and you're like, I don't see the causal evidence there. We're not talking the same thing, right? The government's just come along and, yep, we're going to take your gun because that's what we want to do. Your ideas, they don't match ours. We're just going to take your guns. My bottom line here is make that vote count. Vote for people that align with your principles, your ideologies. And that's what we need to have happen. Because folks in Australia, folks in New Zealand, they have drank the Kool-Aid and they've gone down this crazy, crazy road where they're now their government literally, quashes their ability to go more than 5 miles from their home. You're going to get busted. You're going to get busted. You're going to have you're going to have one of these numbers to you. If you go more than 5 miles from your home, if you haven't had the jab. If you got the jab, you can do whatever you want. Remember when that was a thing in Australia? Just mind-blowing. Thought police. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.